This morning, 16 minutes past 9. That's a North Shore homeowner, wishes to stay anonymous at the moment, is involved in some pending legal action over her home. $450,000 poured into repairs before they gave up and spent $300,000 on a new home after demolishing it. Joining us now, listening to that, in the Auckland studio is John Green, the Chief Adjudicator of the Building Disputes Tribunal. He's also served on the government's Watertight Homes Resolution Service, which began, I think, back in 2003. Good morning again to you, John.
Good morning.
You'll have heard many, many stories like that.
Yes, sadly, but at least with the last caller, they were in a position to be able to do something themselves in terms of funding the repair process. Regrettably, there are many thousands of people out there who simply don't have those financial resources.
There have been devastating consequences for some families, there's no doubt about that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, absolutely. It's incredibly destructive process, and it affects thousands of people. From
your experience, there are some suicides resulting from this?
Well, so far as I'm aware, there have been, but I've got no personal knowledge of that.
What is it that the Building Disputes Tribunal does?
Well, we resolve building disputes right across the board. I mean, not just leaky home claims, but all kinds of building-related disputes.
And you're the largest nationwide independent body doing this work?
Yes, we are.
And government mandated to do it?
Yes, we are, in relation to the Construction Contracts Act.
So take me back to your involvement with the leaky homes issues over the years. Where did it begin?
My involvement began in 2003, I think it was, when I was appointed as an adjudicator to the Watertight Homes Resolution Service. I am still an adjudicated at this point in time with one claim left to deal with.
How big is the problem now?
The truth of the matter is nobody really knows. I mean, there's a huge amount of conjecture, and I guess some of that arises as a result of political impetus, but it's said to be somewhere between $11 billion and $23 billion and to affect up to 89,000 homes. I mean, it doesn't matter where it lies within that scale. It is a huge problem by contemporary or historical standards.
The number of homeowners, or the proportion of homeowners affected by this?
Hard to say once again, but it's not just the homeowners that are affected by this. It's all of the respondents and their families that are affected by it as well. And your previous caller just highlighted the length of time that it takes to resolve these matters. And whilst those processes are in train, people just simply can't get on with their lives.
100,000 homes, perhaps, with perhaps several inhabitants in each, plus the respondents as well. I think you've put it at perhaps anything up to 20% of the population somehow caught up in this mess.
Well, quite conceivably, because it does affect the families. I mean, there's no money to go around. I mean, children are denied opportunities that they would otherwise have. There's health issues. There is a lack of productivity. There's stress, anxiety. It's just a hugely destructive process for anyone to be involved in.
All these years on, then, 7 years since the resolution service was set up. Are these homeowners getting any sort of a resolution? Why aren't the processes working?
The short point is, they're taking so long to resolve, they're hugely expensive to resolve, and at the end of the day, the claimants are not getting sufficient funds to enable them to properly repair their damaged homes. I mean, there was an article on the Herald this morning that really highlighted the problem where people sought to try and take I suppose you could say almost a shortcut to repair, and at the end of the day it's finished up costing them considerably more.
There's also the loneliness of this, which we heard from the former caller, and the fact that it almost seems to be divide and conquer, doesn't it? All these individuals and perhaps 100,000 separate cases trying to fight separate claims.
Well, absolutely, and I mean, and that's got to go back clearly to the previous government. I mean, it made a very clear policy decision to leave redress to the legal process, and knowingly it adopted a classic strategy for defending mass claims, and that's simply from keeping claimants from speaking with a collective voice and to deal with them individually, because on their own each has virtually no leverage.
And no one's really prepared to take the test case the whole way?
No, and the fact of the matter is there wouldn't be many that could even begin to contemplate doing that because of the cost and the time that would be involved. And it's not right that such an important issue should really remain untested, and it's almost unconscionable that the owners of one development should have to shoulder the cost of testing liability issues against all major defendants.
Why is it proving so unsolvable? Because responsibility or liability, and they're two interesting words we'll get to in a minute, because no one is going to accept responsibility and or liability, and because it's too expensive to go through the courts to ram it home?
Well, as you said, I mean, they are two quite different things, and no one is prepared to take responsibility. The only entity that's really capable of taking responsibility for that number of people and for a problem of this scale is the government. To leave it to any private organisation is simply misconceived.
When we look at responsibility, to those who say it's the contractors, you don't necessarily reach that conclusion at all.
Well, certainly some contractors are responsible. Local authorities are responsible. There are a lot of parties to the building process, all of whom have had a hand in the problem, and a number of whom have finished up causing or contributing to the problem that face the homeowners today.
But many of those contractors were working within the law.
They certainly understood that they were. Some of them may have adopted shortcuts. I mean, I have to say, in the last 7 years, there haven't been very many cases where you could actually say, well, you know, somebody deliberately set out to cause trouble or to cause a problem. Sure, some of them have taken shortcuts. There's no question about that. But the reality is they were not to know the tragic consequences because the BIA simply failed to warn them.
Which is a government body.
Which was a government body.
And the local government's role in this?
Well, the local government, of course, has had a significant role in the process. I mean, at the end of the day, it was left to the local authorities to inspect the work of the contractors. That work was approved by their inspectors, and people relied on that process, and they bought, feeling comfortable that the work had been done properly.
So there we've got the three parties, the contractors, the local bodies and central government, which made the law and whose body was authorised to oversee it. Now we come to where we're at 7 years on with people trying to get recourse. And is this a watershed time? What will break the deadlock for these people?
There needs to be a comprehensive solution. I mean, at the moment, we simply don't have that. All that we've done is we've established another legal process that relies on much the same procedures as the procedures in the courts, and it's beyond the financial means of most people to use that process effectively. And as a result of that, they're simply not recovering enough to remedy the problem. So any monies that are paid out in damages are unlikely to be put towards the cost of repair work in many cases. So we're talking legal action here, or are we talking about the Weathertight Homes resolution process? Well, both processes, really.
So they're just left with a gigantic bill and wrecked homes. The government recently put up a proposal to the local bodies, which together would have seen both tiers of government meeting maybe a third of repair costs. It was rejected. Was it a good proposal?
It was a starting point. At least it was an example of the government beginning to look outside the square and to try and come up with some alternative solution to resolving these matters. The local authorities are involved in a large percentage of the claims. Because a lot of the other parties that were involved in the build process are no longer there, the local authorities finish up with liability for 100% of the loss. So anything that would cap the local authorities' liability would be hugely attractive to them. And of course, because they are a player in almost all of these claims, and because it is ratepayers' money that is being used to ultimately to pay for the repair costs, then they're going to battle hard to get the best deal that they can for the ratepayer.
Well, let's look at that. If that 35% had been accepted, it's still only a third of what may be hundreds of thousands of dollars or more. in bills for homeowners.
Yeah. Yeah, look, if you gave somebody a third, you may as well give them nothing, in the sense that it's not going to